I really like the phrase by the great Bruce Lee, be like water. Like you always got to keep on flowing. Water stagnant, it becomes stagnant and it becomes
mosquitoes.
Yeah, mosquitoes becomes a bed threat, parasites. So you got to keep flowing. And in order for me to do that successfully in the United States, you need to have a voice.
Welcome to Business Talk with Eric Chow, a show dedicated to startups and small businesses. This podcast would explore people, events, ideas, and resources that are relevant and interesting to Main Street entrepreneurs. This show is sponsored by World Consulting Inc., the advisor on your side, helping your business go further, faster. Get ready to blow your mind in Season 2, Episode 13 to 15. Join us as we dive into the world of a guest who is juggling more titles than your favorite superhero. Entrepreneur, Web3 guru, music artist, and the man with the master plan of impacting the Asian-American community. So grab your popcorn and get ready for the Sean Koh Show. Sean Koh is the founding partner of Koherent Inc., an extension of the Koh Family Office, and is involved in many industries and either invests, develops, and cultivates strategic relationships for his portfolio companies. When he's not orchestrating strategic symphonies for his portfolio companies, you can catch him moonlighting as ESKOH. It stands for Every Situation Can Offer Hope, an Asian-American R&B pop sensation, gracing stages such as the Showtime at the Apollo with voices that resonate with the very essence of the soul. Sean isn't just a businessman. He's the brains behind the POR, Proof of Reception, a revolutionary web trinity technology to help companies and businesses validate information from social media sites while providing freedom, empowerment, and protection for people's online portions based on their own preferences. Let's welcome the Asian sensation, ESKOH, Sean Koh. Hey, Sean, welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, you're too kind. Thank you.
Wow. I hope I didn't make you blush too much.
It's hard to do that.
I know you are probably very used to the spotlight. But I must admit to you, Sean, this interview by far was probably one of the most challenging interviews to prepare for because of three things: your dynamic family history, and also some of the cutting edge technology that you are developing and investing in, as well as your ambition to become an influential figure in the Asian American community, which we were both part of.
Sure.
And in this 3 episodes, we got a lot to unpack. Obviously your family history, and more importantly, how that is shaping you, shaping your core values. You call business as mission.
Right.
Okay. And when I first read about your ancestry, I felt like it was like a movie in the making. And I think one day it will be a movie.
Yeah, K-Vibe Studios.
Hey, I hope the leadership is taking notes here. And starting from your great grandfather, right, who became the first ordained pastor in Korea, and to both of your grandfathers who kind of revolutionized the to bring the independence of South Korea. And to an uncle who invented HDMI. So there's just a lot of stuff that we can talk about today. But before we get started, share with the audience who you are and how your family has really inspired you for you to be who you are today.
Yes. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Kwa. Thank you, K-Vibe team, for having me today. You pointed out that I'm not the originator, of all these different innovations. It really, as far as I can remember, extends back to my great grandfather, and my mother had shared with me some historic text about him. He was born in 1876. He was of the noble class in Korea. It's called Yanban in Korea. And for so long, Western missionaries were trying to, share the gospel, but they were, either massacred on the shores of the Korean peninsula, or, their message, didn't really, reach the people especially their hearts. Based on what I read and what I've been told, my great grandfather, who was born in 1876, he was the first person to really welcome and receive the messages of these missionaries from Canada and the United States.
He was a nobleman, right?
Yeah.
In Korea.
Sure, yeah. The noblemen of the Yanban class, the noble class there at the time.
Okay.
And this is before North and South Korea, when it was just one kind of a dynastic peninsula.
That's right, back when when Korea starts the spells with C instead of K.
Yeah, so the story goes that Korea was originally spelled with a C.
Uh-huh.
And then, following colonization by Japan, they changed the spelling of Korea to a K so that it becomes, behind alphabetically. Yeah. But long story short, my great-grandfather, welcomed the Westerners, became the ordained minister as well. And, that was kind of the beginning of, Korea, becoming a Christian nation. Now we know South Korea is a very passionate Christian nation, exporting a lot of missionaries. But I feel that was really the stimulus that enabled the Korean people to, really think outside the box and, become the formidable economy it is today. He inspired my grandfather. So this is on my maternal side. So my mom's father, to really take up the English language. So my maternal grandfather was a Shakespearean literature major, probably one of the few in Korea at the time. And he had to kind of study, during the colonization of the Korean peninsula by Japan, which was, I think, 1911, if I'm not mistaken, early 1900s. So at the time, the best academic institutions were in Japan. So he studied there at St. Paul University, which was also set up by some missionaries from St. Paul, Minnesota, and studied Shakespearean literature, became very fluent in the English language. One of his close classmates at the time was my paternal grandfather, and that's how the love story of my parents,
Oh, wow.
is
So
kind
it
of
was like
initiated.
prearranged.
Yeah, between college friends.
Predestined.
Predestined, exactly. But that's another story. And then because, during World War II, 1940s, and the Korean War thereafter, he was probably the best English speaker in the Korean peninsula. He was recruited by United Nations and United States military to be a translator for General MacArthur, General Walker, some of the leading strategists that supported the South to overtake the communism that had invaded the peninsula, from the Soviet Union, China, and, all those early adopters of communism. And
So like up until like your grandparents, there's a heritage of rebellion, so to speak, right? A rebellion against
sure.
the norm at that time, right? Against the
I think it's rebellion, but I also think it's what they thought was right.
Yeah.
What they believed in, the truth of, how things should be and how things could be better. And, I think, the Korean War, there was a episode, during the Korean War where, the South Koreans were pushed all the way down to Busan, which is like the bottom, southeast of Korea. And, there seemed like there was no hope. Korea was going to be dominated by communism. And then my grandfather, this is also within the historical records, shared with General Walker at the time that, there could be some type of military maneuver because my grandfather, knew the local natives and he knew kind of the terrain. And, through that maneuver, which was initiated in the city of Daegu, it was like a flank kind of maneuver. Eventually, with that and, some other actions, in Incheon, another city in Korea, they were able to push back the communists to the current DMZ and the demilitarized zone. And that's how Korea stands today. It's still at war technically. It's just a ceasefire or armistice, if you will. But thereafter, he was, I guess, one of the founding fathers of South Korea's modern democracy. But with any modern democracy, there's always political infighting and jealousy and corruption. So at that point, he thought it was kind of in his best interest, after helping kind of bring democracy to South Korea, to engage, foreign parties, and he got close, with the administrators of USAID. And if you remember at the time, post World War II, there was this Cold War, and the U.S. had what's called the Marshall Plan, where they wanted to spread freedom and democracy, to other regions, not only in Korea, but, Kwa, our good mutual friend, his family went through it in Vietnam as well. So he was able to convince the U.S. government, USAID, to provide funding to rebuild Seoul. He became the largest landowner in a district of Seoul called Myeongdong, which is now, really poppin', vibrant part of Seoul. However, despite, all the wealth he had amassed, because of the political infighting I had mentioned to you earlier, he wanted to have a better future for his children. So in the 60s, he started to, send my aunts, uncles, my mother to California to kind of restart our life in the United States. And he had to kind of leave a lot of his wealth in South Korea, and just like you, your family, my family,
my family didn't leave anything there.
Okay, I mean, we started. We had
anew, nothing to leave.
Well, you left your family and you left your your history there.
Sure.
We started anew in the United States, and he had alluded to my uncle before. So my mom's younger brother, he was a success story in her kind of her generation. He ended up studying at UC Berkeley and coming up with a new technology invention called HDMI, which all these viewers are using now.
Oh yeah, I think there's one plugged in here.
Yeah, and he went public with a company called Silicon Image in the 90s, and was one of the first Asian Americans to be listed on NASDAQ. And, the technology, is still prevalent today, and he's been innovating ever since. And since I spent a lot of time on my mother's side, just to highlight my father's side, my father's father, my paternal grandfather, who was friends with my maternal grandfather, he was like a leading scholar at the time. So he was invited to do his PhD at Harvard, which was very early for also one of the first Asians in psychology. And then he went on to run a reputable psychology department in Chicago. I believe it's the Walter Reese Hospital. And thanks to my paternal grandfather, my father was after he finalized military service, which is mandatory for Koreans, he ended up coming to Chicago, went to Chicago Community College, ended up getting transferred to University of Illinois. When he was there, my dad's a creative guy. He
likes to dance.
Yeah, exactly. His nickname is Disco Duck. He won a lot of dance marathons back in the day, and he wanted to do something fun like marketing, something creative. But because he had broken English at the time, his professors were like, "Why don't you do accounting? Because you don't really need to talk too much. You just crunch numbers and so forth and so on." So he took that route, ended up being admitted to exclusive fellowship program in New York City with Mayor Beam at the time. Mayor Beam is probably...
He was also an accountant.
Exactly, also an accountant. And my dad shares a funny anecdote like, wow, this is the first American I met who's shorter than me. So that was something that he has very strong pride in. But he did learn a lot from Mayor Beam, being an accountant and comptroller previously. And I think he was the only mayor or one of the few mayors that really created a surplus in the New York City budget, which really wasn't done before.
It was on the brink of bankruptcy.
Yeah, exactly. So even though he's not, very charismatic, Mayor Beam, his claim to fame is, he really, turned New York City from a negative to a positive. And I think those lessons stuck with my father because he was involved, in those processes. He ended up going to Deloitte, eventually ended up at Arthur Young in the 80s. And Arthur Young is a predecessor to Ernst & Young. So in the 80s, there was a disruption of the accounting industry where ledgers were going from paper ledgers
to computer
ledgers. And he was part of what I like to call the first disruption of ledger technology. And he ended up, being a part of the founding team at Ernst & Young. It was two separate accounting firms, Arthur Young, Ernst & Winnie, that were becoming distressed. They ended up merging. And my father helped E&Y become a global brand because he had a lot of global network, retired early, bought the largest parcel of land in the New York City metro area at the time, and hired a legendary golfer named Gary Player to design a championship exclusive golf course. And that's kind of where I grew up, realizing that business is more social than analytical or technical. It really happens outside of the office. And as a credit to my father, kind of grew up with the leaders of, various industries, Michael Jordan, Mark Wahlberg, chairman of Goldman Sachs. These are some of the people that were in my vicinity, golfing in Manhattan Woods. My father, having retired early for Ernst & Young, running a golf course, he's similar to me. He got restless and ended up seeing a great opportunity to privatize the Soviet Union in the 90s. So he teamed up, with the leader there, Nazarbayev, who's still in power, providing the first foreign capital to really revive the Soviet Union and turn a lot of the legacy assets into successful business ventures. Eventually, he exited out of it because, within the emerging market strategy, the foreigner only has so much time to control the market because the locals, become sophisticated enough. And just like my, grandfather have done in South Korea in helping that emerging market become a sustainable economy, I think my father saw similar dynamics in the former Soviet Republic and helped, the former Soviet Union and the people that lived in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, not only, we like to say eat fish, but learn how to fish, right? So
teach a man how to fish.
Exactly, and they'll eat for a lifetime. So after doing that, that's when kind of this BAM or business as mission terminology was termed. He does work with other kind of faith-minded entrepreneurs and, really seeing business not only as a means to profit ourselves, but it's definitely a vehicle through which we can spur on economic development for the impoverished people who are less fortunate than ourselves. And furthermore, enable them to survive and eventually thrive. And that's what, I've adopted into kind of my career as well. So
yes,
sorry for being long-winded, but that's the elaborate overall background.
Appreciate the context that you're providing,
Sure.
because that's all that context you provided is going to help us understand the later conversation we're going to have,
For
right?
sure.
But just to sum it up, to help the audience here, in fact, I brought this book to the studio right here, right? 38 Lessons from J.D. Rockefeller to his son.
Nice.
It's a compilation of all the letters that he had written to his son, John, right? And when I was reading that book, I feel like I was his son, learning all those lessons. And, to sum it up, like, what would you say, maybe the three major lessons or wisdom that you have really learned from those who paved the way?
And these are lessons similar to the Rockefeller family, where my father, his name's Sean Koh, he imparted onto me. And my name is Sean, S-E-A-N, for a reason. Number one, my dad really liked James Bond movies. So he liked Sean Connery. So he wanted me to have that international swag, that Sean Connery, naturally had. But secondly, within, I think, Irish or Gaelic language, sorry, I'm not an expert, but this is what I've been told. Sean means John. So it is kind of John. So John's telling John, and that's kind of how I see the parallel with the book you mentioned. But
unbelievable.
Yeah, the three principles I would say, number one is, really boils down to my brand and my name in the entertainment sphere. ESKOH, as you mentioned, stands for every situation can offer hope. So the first principle is having hope even when you think you're in a hopeless situation. You see it through my family lineage, where, my great-grandfather and grandfathers were suffering under Japanese occupation, but somehow they had hope to create a solution. The Korean War brought devastation to the Korean Peninsula, continued to have hope. And now look at South Korea today. It's a vibrant economy, influencing the world in various positive ways. And then starting over in the U.S., it's daunting for any first-generation immigrant, but somehow my uncle had hope, and his siblings had hope, to make it in America, and then HDMI resulted out of that. And then what my father did in, the former Soviet Union, a lot of people were once again devastated and hopeless at that time because, Soviet Union collapsed. They had no means to feed themselves. And also that hope, brought Central Asia, Eastern Europe into the sustainable economy it is today. So I would say first and foremost, you need to see hope. And how that apply that to my life, especially in recent times, during the pandemic, there was a lot of death and a lot of sickness.
Injustice too.
Yeah, and injustice as well. And I think rather than kind of just focus on the problem, but, be a part of the solution, it starts with hope. Because, without hope, there's no reason to live
try.
another day. Exactly. Second principle I would say is vision. Because hope is great, but hope in itself doesn't solve the problem. So you need to have a vision to see an alternative world where the current strife, and the current problems and suffering can be alleviated. And I think that kind of takes some type of creativity to be a visionary. And I would say, that's a very important next step, and to have the experience to kind of come up with a vision that's realistic. And then the third principle is, really action. You have to generate results, and you have to have the drive, passion, and fortitude to take that vision and bring it into fruition. And, one of the things my father always told me, when I had, an idea I want to share with him, is kind of tough love. And he told me, I asked him, Dad, why are you so mean to me since I was young? He said, that's how I love you. It's called Spartan training. I want you to be ready, and I want you to continue, the legacy. And whenever I brought him an idea that I thought was great, he would shut me down right away. And in hindsight, I really appreciate it. He said, idea is penny, execution is everything. So I would say the third step is to really, going against all odds. A lot of things I've done in my career has been going against the grain. I've had a lot of doors closed in my face, but just keep pushing and keep chasing that vision. And that would be the three principles I would probably summarize.
Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Just to summarize, gotta have hope.
Yes.
Have a vision.
Yes.
And massive action.
Correct.
And in order for us to have massive action, because we're gonna experience tough times.
Yes.
Challenges, difficulties,
Yep.
obstacles, but it goes back to principle number one.
Yeah.
Gotta have hope.
And the hope, I think it's now, like, we're so, I would say, blessed compared to like 100 years ago, where if we look hundreds of years ago, like, they survived somehow, right? So I think we got to look at the positive, look at the glass half full, not half empty. I think even the fact that, we have mental illness and we have depression and we're complaining about stuff is because is also a kind of indirect result of the fact that, we have the convenience and luxury to complain. Long time ago, our ancestors, they were just trying to find food or, escape an enemy. They don't have time to complain, right?
They have no time
Yeah,
to
exactly.
complain.
So it's kind of like, I think we should just, really have that heart of gratitude.
Absolutely.
And then that's where the hope is manifested.
Amazing. Wow. Man, this show is flying by, man. Mark, we got to hurry up, right?
Sure.
So moving on to the next topic here, you before the show, you shared with me an article from cranecurrency.com, which is a website dedicated to helping family offices and ultra high net worth families to preserve their wealth and the family values.
Yep.
So you were actually, you and the Koh Family Office were featured in that article. For those who are not familiar, right, a family office is really a private wealth management company, right, that helps wealthy families to grow and transfer the wealth across generations, as well as, planning out the philanthropic investing. And, just from my experience of, coming across other family offices, they typically tend to stay very low profile, sometime in almost like secrecy, right? And one thing I appreciate about you, Sean, is that you are extremely open and transparent. In fact, you're probably the one guest that have shared more information about yourself and and what you're doing prior to the show, and I appreciate those contexts. Yeah. But maybe that's a way for you to kind of control your narrative too, right? By putting out information that you want people to know. But you are the founding partner of Koherent, which is the investment management arm of the Koh Family Office. Share with us, some of the core investment objectives of Koherent and how you really balance between being in the public's eye and while respecting being respectful of your family's legacy or your family office.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the history of what our family has learned is, and what I learned personally, when I was in my 20s, I would just kind of, as they call it in the investment community, spray and pray. Put money in different
spray and pray.
Yeah, put your money in all these different ideas and hope that one becomes a home run. And that's really how the venture capital world works. Mm-hmm. Like they invest in maybe 20 companies and hope that one will be a unicorn and kind of pay back.
That's the percentage, 5%? Or
I think so. Sometimes even 10. Worse. That's why we see this distressed economy 5% today.
5% hit rate?
Yeah, that's why we see this distressed economy today. So learning from that and learning from, the hard lessons of my 20s, we've come to find out that, I think this is like a Chinese adage. They say every crisis is an opportunity, right? So like within, our history, we created...
In fact, that's what the word danger.
Yeah.
The danger, the translation for danger.
Correct.
It makes up of two characters.
Correct.
The left side is danger.
Yep.
The right side means opportunity.
Yeah. And once again, like I said, colonized Korea, Korean War, Soviet Union, all these kind of things have that danger, type of flavor. But that's when you can create kind of true disruption, true innovation, and true paradigm shifts. So what we've realized is rather than kind of just blindly, passively put money in third parties, really think of what is our core competence, really try to leverage that to create paradigm shifts. And obviously I couldn't do that, as a young 20-year-old who had no experience. But, now that I'm, nearing my 40s, I've amassed enough experience to see how the world works, see how it could be better, and then leverage these insights from my family to, develop Koherent into kind of a holdings group of these different operating companies that we control. Because, if you're just a passive investor, you're just kind of going along the ride for someone else. And, the most risky thing about business is the humanity and the human error, of the leadership.
Does the company take an active role in the companies that you invest in?
Yeah, definitely. So, we are, kind of just focused on core assets where we have a majority control.
And what are the different verticals that you guys focus on?
Or
do you have?
Sure. Yeah. Technology, with our history, with my uncle in HDMI, technology has always been a primary objective because technology can create exponential returns or that hockey stick growth, just like HDMI did. We also focus on kind of emerging markets. It's another area where you can have immense growth. My father generated a lot of success.
What is considered emerging market nowadays?
Emerging market can be a geographical.
Because, that definition seems to be changing.
True. Yeah. I mean, emerging market, technically it's a new emerging market, but traditionally it would be something that was kind of geographical. Like, Korea, post-war Korea was an emerging market. And now if someone invested at that time, they'd make, who knows, millions and millions of percent.
Samsung of the world,
right.
The LG.
Exactly. And then, look at my father, at the emerging market at the time was, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, former Soviet Republic. The way that I perceive emerging market, and we'll get to this, in further episodes, is kind of new technology shifts. So I couple the disruptive technology with the emerging market framework to kind of double down on the exponential returns, in the underlying asset classes. So yeah. So emerging market, it can also be content. I'm involved in music. I was involved in helping K-pop, come to the U.S. market. At the time, it was an emerging market. Now it's a formidable market because everyone knows about BTS, Blackpink. Everyone has watched Parasite and Squid Games. So yeah, it's really kind of getting at the market, before it really becomes mainstream. And then, just as they say, as the tide rises, all ships rise.
Yes.
And, really being an infrastructure player and not just kind of being getting into like individual companies, but, really creating the economy at large.
And what do you see your, I guess, the vision as as your family office steps into the kind of the next generation, like yourself or in the future, right? Is it, and really balancing the I guess it's the privacy versus, you being in the public eye, really. Yep. I mean, you are entertainer. Sure.
I mean, I really like the phrase by the great Bruce Lee, be like water. Like you always got to keep on flowing. Water stagnant, it becomes stagnant and it becomes
mosquitoes.
Yeah, mosquitoes becomes a bed for, parasites. So you got to keep flowing. And in order for me to do that successfully in the United States, you need to have a voice. And that's why I needed to reconcile with my family, which is, my family's traditionally quiet, not only because, the family office wealth side, that side of the protection, but, Asians in general, they're just very quiet. They just
put their head down.
Put their head down, do what the boss says. And, if you want to kind of create these new paradigm shifts, you really can't afford, to adopt, that typical mentality. And that's where, I kind of had to create an alternative representation of my family where, thanks to you, I'm getting the word out, about what we're doing. But, early on, there was definitely some type of friction.
Sure.
Because my family wasn't used to it. Also, they're very kind of, they come from a Christian background, and the principles are like, be humble, serve others, don't let.
And just, I mean, for those who don't know you, maybe see you for the first time, I mean, you are one of the most like humble people I know, like in terms of, like even though you share a lot of things about you, but that's from a place of me helping me understand where you're coming from. And I appreciate that.
And that's the heart, that's my intention. Sometimes
it's your intention.
Sometimes I'm perceived the wrong way, like, oh, he's just blabbering on about himself. But, like you had alluded to, it's for me so that I can explain myself to you. And I also want you to explain yourself to me. And, that's where kind of I'm taking at least my personal career and I've started
we're developing our proof of reception.
Exactly.
Which we'll get into the next episode.
Yeah. And my father understands that because he was at, in the accounting firms in Wall Street. And, unfortunately, sometimes the loudest idea, is the most successful idea. But now we're
the squeakiest wheel that gets the attention. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, we're trying to obviously be respectful, of my family and, we don't, divulge, everything, but just the key parts that help us to maintain the success. And I also want to point out that, we see success as a measure of stewardship, right? It's like we've been entrusted with these resources, with these ideas, with this infrastructure. Our mission, and it kind of dates back to scripture, parable of the talents, is like, what did you do in your lifetime? Did you just like maintain what you have, which is also, not really admirable? Or did you really like take the risk and really create something bigger and better from whence you entered the world? And that's really what drives me, being a good steward.
Amazing. Well, Sean, we have to wrap up this episode, but thank you very much for the lesson that you have learned from your family and some of the practical ways, maybe even for people that are part of a family office right now, right? They want to kind of create a new paradigm, going forward. How to communicate that with the family and declare your intention. So thank you so much for that. And make sure you subscribe, click the notification button so you don't miss the future episode. See you next time.